Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Attorneys Dell and Schaefer, and I'm here with attorney Cesar Gavidia. And in today's video, we're going to talk about some tips about how to prevent a Unum long-term disability claim denial. And, there's obviously a lot of nuances here because your specific medical condition will have a big impact on things that you need to do to protect your benefits. However, we're going to talk about some general things that will apply to every claim. And so, Caesar, what's the first thing that comes to your mind about how a claimant who is on claim already can keep themselves on claim and avoid that infamous claim denial?
Well, the most common form of claim denial comes in the form of Unum reaching out to your own medical team, your doctors, and gathering information from them, speaking with them, engaging them in telephone discussions, sometimes completely impromptu without you even knowing about it, and sometimes convincing them that you have perhaps less limitation than perhaps you had been represented or reported in prior reports to Unum, or that you've improved sufficiently or enough to get back to work, or to get back to doing some amount of work or some aspect of your former occupation. So that's one of those infamous pitfalls that we've talked about before. You have to make sure that your doctor's reports, that what they've been representing concerning your disability claim to Unum remains consistent and remains unwavering.
One of the things that, and it's a big deal now, the fact that people aren't going to the doctors as much, but is you could go to the doctor one day and be like, my day's good. Now, what does that mean for someone who's in chronic pain? Is that the same good that you and I would go to on an annual physical and say, hey, we're feeling good? Good for that person might be a 5 out of 10 for a person who doesn't have the limitations that this person has. But if you go in one day and you say you're good and you're feeling okay, disability carrier, especially Unum, is going to take that as a basis to deny a claim. So what I always tell the claimants is you got to go in with the totality of the time that has passed from when you were last there. And you can't go in like Superman, even though you don't want to be a complainer. You have to go in and summarize your symptoms, your conditions. We often talk about having a symptom or a pain management tracking chart so that you can log what's been going on and go into the doctor and explain to the doctor, this is what's been going on with me. Here's my symptoms. Here's a log. And get the doctor to put that in the records. Now, Caesar, how important is the documentation of the doctor's records?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical. The records and your medical history is the foundation of your entire disability claim. So if that's lacking, and I've told, this is a fact, is that unfortunately medical doctors, they don't necessarily go to medical school to learn how to become medical historians. Okay, they usually chart enough and describe enough in your medical records for them to be able to look at that chart the next time you have a visit with them, know what you're coming in to see them for, know what medications you've been prescribed or that you're on, and perhaps have some general understanding of what your prognosis is. I mean, that's the vast majority. Of course, there's exceptions to that, but it's really important what's documented within those medical records, and your doctors are keeping a really really consistent and exhaustive and thorough history of your entire medical issue, medical conditions, your symptoms, your limitations, all of your complaints, and what you were describing earlier in terms of that chart. That's a great way to do it, because if you don't chart these things down, if you don't document this, if you're not your own historian, you can't expect the doctor or his staff at their office to do it or to know to do it. And there's a lot of things that if you're not charting it, you're going to forget, or that you may not remember the next time you go in there. You were saying that you come in and you're reporting, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling improved. I feel good. Well, that's not, always exactly accurate when you're looking over the course or the totality of time, between the last time you saw the doctor, or were there for a visit, and the next visit you have.
And the world has changed in medical records. I mean, years ago, and we're not talking that long ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, doctors were still handwriting medical records. Now they're basically all required to have these digital medical records. And the problem with the digital medical records is that they have preformed fields in them. And so you see the medical records and they look the same every time because the doctor basically starts off from the last record. And the doctor doesn't make changes in those things in particular as to what your symptoms are because, look, the doctors and the patient have a relationship. And like you just said, the doctor isn't really documenting for the disability insurance company. So he or she doesn't care if this button's checked off that says, you have no numbness in your hands and no numbness in your feet when although you do, or, you're 4 out of 5 in your motor nerve study, whatever it may be, normal things that aren't checked off because it's not critical to the doctor's care of you.
Right, or charting how long can they sit, how long can they stand, how far can they walk, how long can they walk. That is not really relevant to their treatment of you and to their overall care of you.
So when the claim gets denied and Unum looks at the medical records, they go, well, we don't see any of these specific complaints. We don't see that you said difficulty sitting, standing, walking. There's no restrictions really in there because that's not the way the doctors document it. So the point of this video, you have to go in there as the claimant. You have to tell the doctor, you must put these things in my records. And that's a big part of what we do when we're helping people with their claims, whether it's applying, continuing to manage a claim, or an appeal. We coach the clients, educate them, guide them as to what needs to be in these records. And by doing that, the claimant is educating the doctor and saying, hey, here's why this has to be in here. Because if it's not, the disability carrier is going to cherry pick, which means pick out what's not in there or what limited thing is put in there that doesn't help me and deny the claim. So I really would appreciate if you could please put all these things in. And the best thing, like we said before, and I can't stress enough, is keep a log or go in with written out things about what you want the doctor to put in there. Because if you don't, it's going to put you in a bad position from my experience. Another issue that I want to talk about with claim tips is filling out the claimant statement. We touched on the attending physician statement, which is a whole nother ball game and working with the doctor, but where can a claimant get in trouble with the claimant statement that would result in a claim denial?
So one of the key things in those claim forms that they ask about are, what are your activities? What do you engage in on a daily basis? Aside from, of course, what are your limitations? How, what are you functionally able to and to do and not to do? But it's really important, one, to describe, in detail. This is your opportunity to describe in detail and explain to the insurance company how you're feeling, the limitations you have specifically, all the problems you're having in particular, and report if things have changed and worsened. I've had to go back to clients so many times and say, we had a discussion last month. You remember that this had occurred, or you had this pain flare, but you didn't describe it here in this claim form that you had this pretty severe flare. You even went to the doctor for it. So I think that informing the insurance company in key detail to what the limitations are, what the problems are, what things have transpired that have gotten worse, that's really key.
And another way that I want you to speak about why it's important is to prevent a claim denial. I think you really need to understand your policy language. Speak about how that could really help a person to avoid a denial by understanding their policy language.
Right. I mean, that's critical. I mean, the policy is the ultimate guideline or guidebook or Bible here with regards to the eligibility requirements and the conditions that you need to meet in order to continue qualifying for benefits. So if your claim forms talk about or ask you about your activities and your restrictions and your limitations, and what you're identifying or indicating in those forms is, say, just enough to disqualify you or make you ineligible to work in the former occupation that you were engaged in, but your policy now has transitioned to a definition of disability where you have to be disabled from any gainful occupation, and the limitations and the the descriptions, the activity descriptions that you're describing in those claim forms don't necessarily appear to disqualify you or prevent you from engaging in a gainful occupation, then your claim is going to be denied.
And I want to talk about another area that we see a lot of claim denials, and an easy way to prevent a claim denial is limiting your social media. Um, and by social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, which is becoming popular. A lot of people have kids. A lot of people are at home now doing stuff. Kids are filming their parents, doing things. Parents are trying to be fun and do stuff with their kids, and they're not realizing their kids are posting or the parents posting. And the disability carriers more than ever now, and I'm seeing it a lot, I'm sure you are too, Caesar, are scanning every form of social media possible to look for you as a claimant doing something inconsistent with what you're telling your doctor you can't do. Um, and that is it's always been a big source of denial, but now so even more because we're seeing a reduction in the video surveillance because people aren't going out as much right now, or at least they weren't over the past couple months. So you're just not as many places to go anymore. They're not going to catch you so much at a restaurant anymore, or going to the movies, or going to an entertainment park, or whatever it may be. So now it's more about what are you doing and what kind of physical things can or can't you do. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of denials where people are more active on the social media because they're at the computer more and sharing more things with their friends, and it's resulting in claim denials. So, Caesar, last thing is, what about these phone calls? I'm seeing a big increase, especially from Unum, where they're talking to the claimants more. They used to come and see them. They're obviously not doing that as much right now. But what should a claimant be aware of when speaking to Unum about their claim?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of those telephone interviews that they have recently been wanting to conduct. So what they're doing is basically gathering that information now on the spot from you. All of those questions related to your symptoms, your conditions, your doctors and their support, and your limitations, and your activities, and what your occupation involves, and all of that. So this is now being gathered through a immediate type of reactionary process of a telephone call. You don't have the time to sit down and think about your answer and think about your response and write it down and say, hey, you know what, I didn't provide enough detail there. Let me go back. And you don't have that opportunity. Now you're speaking to them directly, and they're gathering all that information from you. You may misspeak. You may mistakenly misrepresent. You may omit something really important. And that's what, to be quite honest, they're hoping that may happen.
Well, I know that when we're representing the clients, that those phone calls are a lot of times are not required, especially with Unum. Now, I'm not saying in every policy, but we often may not engage in that phone call and just say, look, if you have specific questions of things that haven't been provided, please send us those questions in writing and we'll answer them. And then there's no he said, she said, there's no inconsistencies, there's no surprises, and you have the time to think about those answers. The other thing is that if you're unrepresented, you may say something that can hurt your claim. You don't know necessarily. I mean, there's not a question that we've heard every question, so we know every which angle they're going, but you can have someone help you through that process, especially if they want to speak to you. In the same way you can have someone help you with your claim forms, help you with the attending physician statement, all the things that we spoke about. So those are, available options, and obviously a monthly claim handling service that we offer or help people apply so that they get in the best position possible to avoid a denial. But we try to do these videos to educate claimants so that they're doing everything. And even with doing everything, is there a guarantee that you're not going to get denied? Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, Unum's going to rely on their own nurses, their own doctors, and it's sad to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Caesar, but they don't really care what your doctor says so much. It's more about preparing your file so that if you do get denied, we can rebut what their doctors say, because I have never ever seen a file where Unum sent it to their doctor or their nurse and their doctor came back and said, well, I think this person is not disabled, and Unum took the position where they would disagree with them. So you're always going to have a case where Unum's always going to defer to their own nurse. They're always going to defer to their own doctor, and that's something you got to be aware of. So you got to prepare for the worst case scenario, and especially when dealing with Unum. So, we have tons of videos about Unum for every single stage. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because on a weekly basis, we're putting out videos like this where we're offering claim tips and talking about cases around the country that are happening, and trying to make claimants always aware of what's going on, and obviously letting them know that we're here for you if you need us. The important thing is that we always offer a free initial phone consultation. We encourage you to contact us. We help clients all over the country, no matter where you live, whether it's Caesar, myself, or any of our lawyers. We look forward to helping you should you need us in the future.